Hello students, this is your Bhushan sir. Hope all of you are fine and safe at home. Take care of your health students. Well, today we shall understand another topic related to the field of applied environmental biology, and the topic is integrated pest management. In short, it is IPM. We all know that crops are the plant products grown to meet the nutritional value and level of the growing population. Crops are of three types based on their cultivating seasons. Kharif crops grown during the rainy season, rabi crops grown during the winter season, and zaid crops are grown during summer season. All these cultivated crops are stored safely to avoid loss by using various protective methods against the pests. It includes usage of fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, etc. It was in 1967 R.F. Smith and Den Bosch used the term IPM or Integrated Pest Management. Then what is this IPM? IPM is an ecological approach wherein different methods of pest control are used at a time to reduce and maintain the pest population at below the injury level of them. The main aim of IPM is to promote the natural control methods of pests, protect the human health, minimize the negative impacts on non-target organisms, and to enhance the general environment. To use cost-effective methods and easily to efficient implementing methods. Fine. Then how is this IPM executed? What are all the different stages that it includes? So IPM program includes elements number 1, pest and host identification. Now, the next is monitoring the extent of damage induced by the pest. The next one is preventing pest by planning and managing the ecosystem. The next is treatment stage, where different methods of control of pests are combined against the pest control or management. The last stage is evaluation, where the executed effective plans are studied and recorded for further usage in future. Coming on to the history of pest management. It starts way back from 2500 BC, where Sumerians used insecticides on insect pests. In 200 BC, Romans used oil spray against these pests. In 300 AD, Chinese used predatory ants to control caterpillars and beetle pests. In 1930, organic synthetic compounds are used against the pathogens. It was in 1961, Giger and Clark proposed the concept of pest management. In 1967, The term Integrated Pest Management, in short IPM, was introduced by Smith and Bosch. In 1985, India officially started this IPM strategies. Well, students, we have understood that IPM is the usage of various methods of pest control to acquire synergistic effect where more than 95% of pest population are eradicated. Then which are these control methods of pests? There are many methods that we shall understand one by one. To our class of today, we shall consider only the major types. It includes cultural control methods, mechanical methods, physical methods, biological methods, genetic control methods, then regulatory methods, chemical control methods, biotechnological methods, and environment manipulation methods. Now we shall understand one by one of these methods of control of pests. The first one to start is cultural methods. It is also called as agronomic practices. These methods includes various practices that are changed to reduce the pest population by affecting their reproduction or survival conditions. To understand this methodology, we shall see an example. In irrigation, too much of water supply to a given field of agriculture induces increased root diseases and increased number of weeds. So, this practice is changed by decreasing the water supply to such fields. This change in the practice is called as cultural control method. It includes usage of resistant plant varieties, crop rotation, crop sanitation, water management, etc. The next control method used in IPM is mechanical methods. Mechanical methods makes use of machinery system to kill or control the pest population. Example, usage of traps for rodents, barriers for the vertebrates, then screens for the insects. Further, to ease our understanding, to cut the infected parts of plants in a given area, we make use of machinery system like in the form of knives or any iron metal. So these acts as a machinery system. Similarly, barriers are another type of mechanical parts in the path of these pests, thus their population gets decreased. So it may be in the form of folded burlaps, nothing but the gunny bags, which are smeared with the insecticides inside. And it is done, this is a practice which is done to reduce the population of red ants in the forms of mangoes. Usage of traps of pests, that includes two types of traps which are commonly used. Number one, pheromone traps. Number two, light traps. The trap at its central part has pheromones or sex attractants. Thus, opposite sex insects moves into these traps and gets killed inside. Generally, male population of insects gets confused because it's a sex attractant which is volatile substance produced by the female. So when we place it in a trap, The males, by confusion, starts moving towards it, gets trapped inside the instrument and dies within. Similarly, light traps, Chinsura light traps or mercury light traps, where phototropic insect pests are trapped and killed. Phototrophic refers to the insects which love to move in the light. Remember, students, these are all the insects which are attracted or trapped during the night times. There are insects which moves or which are active during night time called as nocturnal insects. Such insects are trapped by using these two methods. The next method is physical control methods of pests. These methods also kills pest population by altering the physical factors, and human beings are directly involved in it. Alteration of physical factors like temperature, moisture, and light are predominantly seen in this technique. Example, hot water is sprayed or used to kill the hibernating pests of rodents in the empty godowns. The infected grains are exposed to the sunlight to kill the pest population within. Similarly, moisture is one of the factors that attracts the fungi and microbes which acts as a pest here. Thus, before storage step, the food grains are subjected for drying to decrease the moisture content. Thus, the pests of the fungi and microbes are kept away from the infection. Next is light. Most insect pests are attracted by light, as what we have understood just now. Bright yellow light is an example for attracting nocturnal insects or the insects that are active during night. So, farmers makes use of this idea of using light and trappers together to kill the pest insects. So generally, the trappers along with the light is kept near the agricultural fields, away from the original agricultural field between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. The next control method of IPM is biological control methods. Here, the living organisms are used against the pest population. Usually, natural enemies of pests are used in this technique. It includes predators, parasites, pathogens, and parasitoids of pests. These enemies are from the groups of organisms, of microbes, nematodes, vertebrates, and even some plants. Parasitoids are organisms that live on a parasite, and this parasite will live on the pest which are the host. It provides no benefit to the host, that is to the pest, but destroys it. In this category, most insects are used and are called as protolean parasites, and it was a Reuter in 1913 studied on this particular concept. Parasites are organisms that lives on host, damaging the host's health. Generally, dipteran flies and wasps are widely used here. Ephidae attack aphids, then Trichogrammidae attacks insect eggs. Pathogens are microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, protozoans, and even some of the viruses, that induce diseases in the pest organisms. Bacillus thuringiensis, then granulosis virus are the best examples for it. The next category are predators. They are another group of organisms that feeds on the pest population. So, the pest population acts as the prey here. Example, birds, mammals, and reptiles. The next method of IPM is genetic control methods. Here, the genes are manipulated to induce sterility in the insects. So, we are going to bring in sterility in the insect population that will affect the inheritance mechanism or pattern in them. One important sterility technique induced in the pest population is use of sterile male technique. It is also called as sterile insect technique or sterile insect release method. In this type of genetic control method, the sterility is induced in male insects. Understand? Male insects are selected to induce the sterility. Females that acts as vectors or carriers of diseases that causes the spread of the pathogens. Coming on to the mechanism of this SIT technique, it makes use of ionizing radiations like gamma rays to induce the breakage of DNA on the chromosomes. We know that chromosomes will have the genes on them which are responsible for maintaining the character. So, our traits. The character responsible for the courtship behavior and reproductive behavior are altered because their damage on the damage of DNA on the chromosomes is brought about by these gamma radiations. Usually, cobalt 60 or cesium 137 radioisotopes are used as sources of these gamma radiations. Remember, students, if any chemicals which have the similar effect like that of gamma radiations as what you find here, like cobalt, cesium, etc., are called as radiomimetic agents. They mimic the radioactive elements. So here are all the radiations. Here are the chemicals which will radiate the radiations or emit the radiations of gamma type. So, breakage of DNA induces sterility, especially on courtship behavior, which is induced in males. Now, these sterile males are released into the environment to have mating process with the native female insects, which are non-sterile otherwise. So the eggs of females, now if at all they produce, those eggs will not hatch at all because they carry the DNA which is said to be broken or breakage DNA. Thus, the number of native insects will start decreasing, leading to a condition of extinction. The next method of IPM is legal or regulatory method. Here, the regulatory rules are framed by the government where the seeds or plants of infected stage are not allowed to enter into the country or from one part to other parts within the country. So the infected plants and the products are not allowed to move from one place to another place or one country to another, and these restrictions are also called as quarantines. Students, you all are aware about the word quarantine. So it will cease the movement. It will stop the movement. So that is the exact meaning of the term here too. The next IPM method is chemical control methods. As we have learned in the previous chapter and sessions, chemicals are synthesized, or even it could be natural, extracts which are used against the pest population to kill them, and they are collectively called as pesticides. It is classified into various types based on their target organisms. It includes insecticides, rodenticides, herbicides, fungicides, virucides, bactericides, etc. These target organisms, when comes in contact with these range of pesticides, the chemicals gets imbibed into the body, or when they come in contact, those chemicals are contact poisons. So when the pest population comes in contact with these chemicals, the chemical will imbibe into the body of the insects, affects the enzyme action of the enzyme called acetylcholine esterase. Thus, most pesticides acts as neurotoxic compounds. Students, remember, this acetylcholine esterase is an enzyme which will induce the neurotransmission of signals. So, in case of insects or any of the variety of pests, whenever they come in contact with the chemicals of pesticides or insecticides especially, this chemicals gets into the body, stops the activity of this acetylcholine esterase. Thus, most insects will suffer from various conditions of ailments like seizures, paralysis, and at last the death of the pest itself. One of the important things that we should remember here is that pesticides are combined with other methods for an effective control of pests only when it is in need. Students, remember, pesticides will not be used as a first preference IPM method, because we know that any chemicals, when are added to the nature, it will damage the environment and cause various adverse effects on the non-target organisms. So it will harm the people, harm the environment, it will harm the non-target organisms. In order to overcome this, we keep this usage of pesticides, that too of chemical pesticides, as the last option. And it will not be used directly, it will be combined with the other methods. So that's the importance of chemical control methods. So besides the chemicals used as pesticides, they are also used to confuse the male insects in the agricultural fields by using the female sex attractant hormone in various traps. So these chemicals along with trapping method together is used to kill the pest population. Chemicals are also used as repellents against the vector insects like mosquitoes, ticks, and flies that transmit the diseases. Repellents prevent the behavioral strategies of these insects and stops attacking of the humans and other non-target organisms. Example, IR 3535, lemon oil, eucalyptus oil, etc. Chemicals are also used as inhibitors of insect growth regulators because these chemicals mimic the IGRs in the flies. So there are chemicals which will mimic the action of the growth regulators of the insects. But actually, these mimicking compounds are the inhibitors of the insect growth regulators. So it is commonly seen using in cockroaches and mosquitoes. Chemicals are widely used as insecticides to eradicate the insect pests like the locusts, then root borers, mites, etc. One of the well-known insecticide is DDT. So it is an insecticide that is widely used to kill the insect population. If insecticide kills the pests at their egg stage, they are called as ovicides. If they are killed at their larval stages, they are called as larvicides. Students, we have dealt about this particular concept much in the first chapter or the previous chapter, that is toxicology. The next approach method of IPM is biotechnological approach. Genetic engineering technique, of course, techniques are used to introduce new genes into the plants so that the plants cannot destroy. Plants cannot be destroyed or it will not be attacked by the pest population. So these new genes which are introduced into the plants will stop the behavioral characters of the insect pests, which will depend on these plants. For example, we know that monophagous insect is this silk moth. Silk moth will depend only on the mulberry. So hence it is called monophagous. Phagous means feed, mono means single. So it will depend on only one species of the plant. If we could induce a gene into that plant where the texture of the leaf gets altered, the color of the color character of the plant gets altered, flower get altered. Certain of the characters like this, if we bring into the plant, which will not suit this pest insect to live upon. So such conditions are done by using the genetic engineering techniques. I just gave an example of monophagous by taking the silkworm. Here remember, the silk moth or silkworm is not a pest. Okay, so it is a beneficial product what we get out of it. So we cultivate it. It comes in the economic zoology part. Okay, fine students, like this there are pest insects also available in the nature. This new genes introduced, as we know, it will alter the behavioral character of the pest. Such plants are called as transgenic plants. These transgenic plants provide certain of the characters to the plant itself, that is herbicide tolerance, then insect resistance, and also bring in male sterility of the pest. The first transgenic plants with Bacillus thuringiensis were produced in 1987. The transgenic plants with resistance suppresses the pest infections. They are widely used against pests that destroys the plants by feeding, that is phytophagous insects. So as I said, phyto means plants, phagous means feeding. Insects that feed on the plant are called phytophagous insects. So such insects are killed by using this technique. Students, remember, there are two types of resistance noticed in these resistant plant varieties. It includes vertical resistance and horizontal resistance. Vertical resistance transgenic plants will carry only single resistance gene in it, whereas horizontal resistant transgenic plants will carry multiple resistant genes in them. So if a single resistant gene for a character, if it is administered into a transgenic plant, we call it as vertical resistance. If many are added, we call it as horizontal resistance. So if the resistant activity is on the biology of insect pest, that is its living pattern, it is called antibiosis. Antibiosis. So what is antibiosis? It is the resistance that is created on the pest population against its biology. If the resistance is against the behavioral aspects of the pest, then it is called as xenobiosis. Okay, xenobiosis. Similarly, few transgenic plant species show tolerance to abiotic stress, that is stress caused by the temperature, light, water, soil profile, etc. Transgenic plants delays senescence and show drought resistance also. It is achieved by the introduction of SAG1 and SAG2 inactivating genes of farnesyl transferase and isopentenyl transferase genes. The next IPM approach is manipulation of the environment of pests. It is also called as ecological engineering process. In this technology, the habitat or the living place of the pest is altered or changed or manipulated. It is a modern method of pest control. It is non-pesticidal. You're not going to kill directly the pests. So, it is an indirect method. It includes the example of menace of rodents is controlled by cleaning the living places of them. So rodents, if are considered as pests, if you could clean the living places of these rodents, we call it as ecological manipulation. Also, we can alter the environment of the habitat by closing the burrows. These changes stops or blocks the habitat for the pests. And this idea for the first time was suggested by Odom in 1962. So, according to him, the ecological engineering process includes designing, operation, management, and repair of living systems. So these are all different stages by which we can approach the ecological engineering method. If we clean the environment or habitat of the pests, it is called sanitation. If we keep some mechanical instruments to catch and destroy these pests, it is called excision. If we make the use of certain of predators at the habitat of the pest, then it is called suppression. So, ecological engineering can be achieved by sanitation, that you clean up the environment of habitat, excision, where you keep certain of the mechanical parts to kill the pest, for example, the rat traps. And if you take the example of the rat itself here, if you clean up the place of the rat, where it lives, the habitat place, we call it as sanitation. If we could place a mechanical instruments there to destroy, catch and destroy these rats, then we call it as excision. For example, traps, rat traps. if we could use some predators at the habitat of the pests, nearer to the place where these rats are, if you could place a cat, it is called a suppression. So, sanitation, excision, and suppression are the major methods by which you can have the process of ecological engineering. Students, with this, we have completed the definition and approaching types of IPM. All the approaching methods are important together for major answer question. Take care of yourselves. Please post your comments and queries to my personal WhatsApp number. Thank you all.